Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. So I've already done the 5-day forecast. You can find that video here on the homepage. Just scroll down the page a little bit and it's above the snow day. It's also a written version. You get that from buttons at the top of the page. Going to be starting off quite unsettled, but the course of the 5-day forecast period actually sees high pressure building in. So we finish up by the start of next week, really quite dry and mild. And it'll be where that high pressure goes through the course of next week that will determine whether we're going to get some very cold weather. And we may be in for a big freeze before this February is done with us. So there is a possibility for some very cold and usually cold for late February weather. And also snow. But of course, as ever, with the weather in the British Isles, particularly when it comes to cold winds from the east, it's all on a bit of a knife edge, and it may not come to very much at all. So I'll talk you through everything that's going on right now, and also have a look at the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation, and what's happening in the stratosphere as well. So a lot to cram in to today's second video update. But we're going to begin by having a look at a couple of pictures that have been sent through to me from Hungary. This is Ország in Hungary, and they had a very snowy day a couple of days ago. So we see some pretty deep snow there in Ország in Hungary. And we can see that it was a particularly snowy sort of afternoon there. So big thank you to people that sent that through. You can always email your weather pics to gadsweathers@gmail.com, and we're always happy to feature those pictures in the videos as well. So I'll have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. This is the latest temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. So we've got the black line here, which tells us what the temperature is currently doing, what it has been doing through this season. And we can see that at the moment we have got quite a warming taking place at 10 HPA. The grey line is the trend, of course, so we are above average, quite substantially so. Perhaps not quite as much as we might have expected to be by this point within the stratospheric warming, although we are going to get a second burst of warming at 10 HPA in a couple of days. But the chart for 30 HPA, which is a little bit lower, looks much more dramatic. Just look at that, and that's really gone off the scale virtually in terms of that black line. That's where we are right now. Within 3 days, it's gone from around there, I think, up to there, and of course way above the grey line, which is the temperature average. That's what a sudden stratospheric warming looks like. I told you, but they do look very dramatic on these charts when they happen, and that's a very great example of a really dramatic warming of the stratosphere at 30 HPA. And this is probably going to continue a bit longer as well, because the models are picking up on potentially a second bout of warming that might even take this off the scale, unless the JMA website sort of lift the scale up further. I mean, it finishes at -30, but what they might do is sort of increase the scale, so it goes up to -20, -10. They may have to do that, and if they don't want that black line to go off the scale, because the ECMWF is suggesting the chance that we might go off the scale with that temperature at 30 HPA. I shared this chart on Twitter earlier today, and quite a few people were a bit incredulous about it and wondered whether there is some sort of anomaly or something gone wrong with the chart. But it is correct. This is what the temperature is currently doing at 30 HPA. This is from the ECMWF website from the University of Berlin. And the black cross here indicates the actual North Pole itself of the Northern Hemisphere. And you can see with the scale on the side here that we've gone up to around sort of -40 to -35 in that sort of region. Around the pole, and so on this scale we finish at -30, that's -30 there, that's -40 just there. So you can see that in terms of where the temperature is right now, between -40 and -30 on this chart. That is correct. That is a correct view. What makes it look so dramatic is that it's happened so quickly. So the black line just shoots up like that. It's virtually a vertical line. But it's correct. It's not an anomaly. That is exactly what is going on in terms of the temperature at 30 HPA over North Pole right now. They said they do look dramatic when they occur, and that certainly backs that up. Now, we may go even higher with these temperatures in the coming days. So this is the forecast from the ECMWF model for 96 hours at 30 HPA, which is the 17th of February. You can see by then the temperature is actually beginning to lower a little bit, because we can't keep those extreme warm temperatures going all that long in the stratosphere. So by sort of the start of next week, over weekend into next week, we're beginning to see those temperatures starting to level off a little bit. But then look what happens as we go up to 120 hours. We're getting a renewed burst of warming around Canada and Greenland, that being the North Pole there, of course. That's on the 18th of February. And then, as we go through up to there, we go through to 144 hours, and the warming has intensified. Again, the colours have gone even deeper in terms of those orange colours. So now we're going up close to around minus 25 at 850 HPA, and this scale finishes at minus 30. So if that came off, we went up to around minus 25 or even higher than that. They would either take that black line off the scale, or they would have to increase the scale. But certainly the ECMWF anyway is going for a renewed sort of burst of warming of the stratosphere at 30 HPA through the course of next week. This takes us to a week away, 20th of February, and again bright orange and red colours there over the North Pole indicates that we are going to get a second burst of significant warming of the stratosphere at 30 HPA over the North Pole at that point. We go through 240 hours, which is 23rd of February. By that time, again, the temperature is starting to low, because we can't maintain those very warm temperatures for very long. So the temperature is beginning to lower as we go to day 10 in terms of the stratosphere, but still significantly above average at that point. This has already reversed the zonal winds, so this is the wind and flux chart from the University of Berlin website, based on the ECMWF again, and this is where we are now. We are negative with those zonal winds at 1 HPA, so the zonal winds have reversed, they've gone easterly, and they're going to stay negative now pretty much through to around daytime. I mean, by daytime they're just beginning to struggle up close to neutral, but generally it's going to be around a week, maybe more, of reversal of the zonal winds, which is bound to have impacts. Is going to impact the troposphere, I think, and we're just going to have to wait and see what that tropospheric response is. But I would suspect see a significant blocking signal develop over the coming days, and that's certainly what we're seeing on the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. I showed you this yesterday. The Arctic Oscillation was starting to plunge, and we still see evidence of that within the GFS ensemble. This is the latest update. So starting here, the black line of course tells where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red lines at the end where the GFS ensemble is forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. We are actually very positive with the AO at the moment, but it's pretty much downhill all the way from here. This is the second half of February. So sort of by the sort of third week of February, we are back to neutral or negative, and you'll see that many of these ensemble members now are going for a real collapse of the Arctic Oscillation, a real plunge into extreme negativity, a real drop off the cliff, if you like, going down to that sort of level with several of those members of the GFS ensembles. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state that these ensembles are forecasting. So when the index goes negative like that, it tells you that many of those members of the GFS ensembles are forecasting significant blocking over the North Pole, almost certainly in response to the stratospheric warming and reversal of the zonal winds. This is the North Atlantic Oscillation as well. This has been very positive all the way through the winter. It went positive virtually on the first day of December after being negative through November. And it's been gradually going more and more and more positive through the winter. That's where we are right now, the very positive NAO. But you see that the trend, again, it is very much down into negative territory from here. Not quite going off the cliff, not as dramatic as what we see in terms of the Arctic oscillation, and we wouldn't expect it to be because the stratospheric warming and the reversal of the zonal winds is happening over the Arctic. So we would expect the most dramatic response in terms of a blocking signal to be happening over the North Pole. Of course, where that blocking is sitting is the critical factor. It doesn't guarantee, none of it's guaranteed the fact that we will get cold from this. But you would expect the most dramatic response, we see it from the Arctic Oscillation Index, to be over pole. But the NAO also at the same time is being forced into negative territory if the GFS ensembles are right, particularly through the final week of February, this period just here. We are now seeing signs of going negative for the first time since the second half of November. So it's been a long run of positivity of the NAO, but we are now seeing signs that the NAO is going to be trending negative through the final week of February. I would expect that to continue into March as well. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. This is looking at Sheffield today. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. This is where we're starting off at right now, quite mild. Going to go a little bit cooler than average over the next couple of days, then milder over the weekend and to start next week. Now, from a fairly early point in this ensemble graph, there is quite a bit of uncertainty. So you'll see that most of the ensembles are going cold to very cold. In fact, there are some exceptionally cold ensemble members which go down to minus 15 at 850 HPA through these closing days of February. They're these members just here. If they came off, we would be talking about ice days, definitely. We would be talking about severe night frost, and we would probably be talking about heavy snow as well with that kind of upper air temperature. There are still several ensemble members that are keeping things milder, though. These ensemble members just here. And some of the ensemble members, of course, they turn things very cold for a time, and then they quickly turn things milder again. That's that one just there. And maybe even the operational run of the GFS, which I'll show in a moment, to some degree. Now, as I say, the uncertainty is coming from quite an early point in the ensemble as well. It's starting from around the early part of next week. So you'll see the way we get into that colder weather is they're differing, these ensemble members, by quite a few days. So these ensemble members just here are taking us into cold or very cold conditions very quickly through as early as around the middle of next week, even say Tuesday to Wednesday. Next week. These ensemble members up here, they are much slower in turning things colder, and most of them do eventually turn things colder, but it happens later. So as early as around Tuesday or Wednesday next week, we have got quite a bit of uncertainty, and this cold weather could be unleashed quite a lot quicker than you might think by looking at that ensemble graph. But certainly by the final days of February, this period just here, most of the ensemble members are going cold to very cold. The white line here is the ensemble mean, and you see that's substantially below the red line, despite these mild outliers that we still have up here. The white line, the ensemble mean, is substantially below the 30-year average. So the GFS ensembles are definitely trending in a cold sort of direction. I know a lot of you would like to see an ensembles watch. I always struggle for time in the evenings in the week, which is why I usually do the ensembles watch on a Sunday evening. If I have time, I may bring that to you later, but I wouldn't expect to be seeing an ensembles watch until the weekend, but I'll just have to see sort of what time I have this evening. I know a lot of you are asking, have a look at those GFS ensembles to see how those very cold ensemble members are developing. This is the GFS in terms of precipitation and surface temperatures. So we're starting off relatively mild there. Going to go a bit cooler for a few days. Again, this is for Sheffield. We go mild over weekend and start of next week, and then the trend through next week. Obviously, it's increasingly down. It's going cold, even very cold. Some of these ensemble members going down to that sort of level, which isn't. Remember, this is surface temperature. And some of the minimum nighttime temperatures are going below -5 degrees there. Also, a lot of dry weather coming up. That's the other message about all of this. So we see a complete lack of precipitation spikes. Essentially, there is some precipitation coming through. Keep in mind the precipitation that does come through is likely to be falling as snow as we get into that colder weather later next week. But essentially quite dry, starting fairly mild and becoming cold, potentially even very cold, is the story of the ensembles today. Temperature anomalies are looking like that for the next week, a little bit milder than average. Of course, this is covering the period over the weekend to the start of next week, where temperatures do lift up. If this Scandinavian high gets going, expect these charts to trend colder, increasingly so. But from the 14th to the 22nd of February, coming out a little bit milder than average. Precipitation anomalies from the 14th to 22nd of February coming out substantially drier than average. Over in America, look at that, very warm indeed over in the eastern side of the states, with temperature anomalies from the 14th to the 22nd of February, substantially milder than average. It is colder up in the north and northwest. And then, again, this is a bit of a flip on the pattern that's happened through this winter so far. So it just tells us that the long wave pattern, not just around the UK and Europe, but around much of the northern hemisphere, I suspect, is being impacted by this warming of the stratosphere, and the long waves are shifting quite a lot. For the precipitation anomaly for America, varies from states to state. It's driving average in the west, it's driving average in the southeast and in the midwest, but in between it's a bit wetter than average. Right, this is the GFS midnight run, when we have high pressure building up on Sunday. That becomes increasingly dominant to Monday. This all covered during the 5D forecast, of course. That takes us to Tuesday. Still under high pressure, dry and relatively mild at that point. By Wednesday, the high pressure is beginning to push northwards. Its centre is moving to the north of Scotland and up towards Iceland, so that by Thursday we've got a proper blocking feature setting up there. High pressure centering itself between Iceland and Scandinavia. The jet stream is doing something rather like that, and we are certainly beginning to pull in somewhat colder air from the north and the northeast. Remember, this could happen quicker, this transition to cold weather, than this is showing. As we go through to the end of next week, this is Friday 23rd of February, the winds are beginning to turn into the east, and then by day 10, which is Saturday the 24th of February, we are going into a very cold easterly wind, which would be dragging bitterly cold air in from the east, and also quite a lot of heavy snow as well. There's the upper air temperatures for Saturday 24th of February, showing that it's very, very cold, severely cold to our east and northeast, and back very cold air sort of engulfs the country by the time we get through to Sunday 25th of February. Beyond that, we have a go at getting rid of that cold air with these areas of low pressure down to the southwest. They start to push in, probably bring copious amounts of snow to many parts of the country with this bitterly cold easterly wind, and then the attempt to turn it milder actually fails, and the low pressure sort of slips away. The block and the cold air wins the battle, and we maintain those very cold north or northeast winds. That's a prolonged, very cold, and at times very snowy spell of weather that the GFS midnight run was forecasting for the final days of February and into March. Notice we finish on the 2nd of March, so we've gone into the beginning of spring on a very cold, snowy note. ECMWF looks like that. High pressure building up. Sorry, this is the GFS 6 o'clock run. Getting ahead of myself. This is 6 o'clock run of the GFS. So this is the latest. Again, high pressure building in from the south and west, dominating the weather through the course of next week. Gradually through the week, it's pushing further and further north. So by the time we get through to the end of next week, Friday, 23rd of February, we've got a proper blocking feature setting up again from Greenland and Iceland over towards Scandinavia. It's blocking off the mild air and the low pressures in the Atlantic. The jet stream is going rather like that. It's a very extreme blocking pattern that we're setting up there. And again, similar to the midnight run by day 10, which is Saturday 24th of February, we're pulling in that very cold air from the east. We have a go at bringing low pressure, mild temperatures in from the Atlantic. Coming up against that very cold air, that's a real snowmaker, particularly for England and Wales. Look at those upper air temperatures, really, really cold across not just the UK, but many northern parts of Europe. That looks very snowy on Monday, the 26th of February for England and Wales. This is a severe spell of cold and snow that both the midnight and GFS runs are predicting for the closing days of February. And similar to midnight run of the GFS, that attempt to dislodge the cold air fails, and we just keep this block feature going right way through into the start of March. It remains very cold and wintry. ECMWF is not as bad, so this is how, or as good, depending on what your point of view is. So this is the weekend into next week. High pressure gradually building, gradually becoming more influential. But what happens here, and I talked about this in the video yesterday, it's always a problem with Scandinavian highs and easterly winds, is that we don't get the high pressure as far north. So that's how we finish up on day 10. And instead of having the high pressure up here, sort of between Greenland and Scandinavia, we've actually got the high pressure around there, which is like Denmark and northern Germany. It's a very big difference, because what it means is that we don't get that direct easterly. Most of the cold air is actually going in that direction, and we're just bringing in a slack sort of flow from off the continent, which would be probably quite chilly, but certainly no big freeze in that kind of scenario. So if you don't want cold weather, and not everybody watching this is going to want really cold and snowy weather for the closing days of February. If you don't want it, that's what you want to happen. You want to see that high pressure centering somewhere around Denmark or Germany, not getting up to Scandinavia, certainly not getting up to northern Scandinavia, and setting itself up between Iceland and Norway. You want that high pressure to be further south, and so that would send the cold air down into southern and southeastern Europe. That was a mild outlier though, so just finishing with the ECMWF ensembles from De Beeld, and of course that's in Holland, which is the way to our east. They will get the cold air on any easterly winds first, of course. The red line here is the operation run, what I was just looking at of the ECMWF, and you can see that was perhaps not a mild outlier, but it was certainly up there with the very mildest ensemble members, and a lot of those ECMWF ensemble members are actually cold to very cold as we go through these final days of the month. So I think we do have to have quite a lot of caution about what's happening here. The ECMWF is still not entirely sold on it, although it was a milder outlier. But GFS and its ensembles much more bullish, I think, actually, about the chance of something really quite significant happening. Bearing in mind this is very late in the winter now, so to be seeing the chance of a -10 or even -15 isotherm getting over the North Sea and into the UK is quite unusual for so late in the winter. If it's January, it wouldn't be all that unusual, but certainly for this late in winter, it's quite unusual. And the GFS and its ensembles are really quite bullish about it. ECMWF not quite sold on it, but we do see there that it was sort of a milder outlier within its ensemble suite. So we're just going to wait and see. The first part of this is to get the high pressure north. So I think we are going to definitely build in that high pressure early next week, and initially it'll give us quite mild weather. It's from around Wednesday, Thursday. We've got to see how far north we push that high pressure. Do we get it up to Scandinavia or sort of Iceland and that sort of area? Or do we keep it stuck around Denmark and Germany as the ECMWF is showing? That will determine whether we turn very cold for the final stages of February. Right, don't forget to check out the 5-day forecast if you haven't yet done so. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.